In Brazil, a fundamental chapter in the history of mankind is unfolding, that of how our planet was populated. For many years, archaeologists have been trying to retrace Homo sapiens' long march. 13,000 years ago, they left Africa and entered Europe, then Asia, and then came to North America via the Bering Straits, which were covered in ice. But today, archaeologists claim that Homo sapiens' first step on the American continent occurred earlier than 25,000 years ago. This discovery completely modifies the concept of how the very first Americans came to be. The discovery took place in a well-known archaeological excavation site in the Serra de Capivara National Park. A half a century ago, beautiful rock paintings were discovered on the faces of these cliffs. What a fabulous site. I've wanted to come here for years. It's very well known. I only knew it from photos, so to see it now with my own eyes is a unique emotion. Here we have hundreds of rock paintings, mainly in red and white, which represent little figures, little stick figures engaged in rather mysterious activities. Animals too, this one with a little round black head. Its tail is curved. It's certainly a monkey. Here is a mammal and another smaller one above it. Then there are much more mysterious scenes with much more pronounced polychromy, with gray and white. The oldest paintings have been dated from 12,000 years ago, so this signifies that humans lived here 12,000 years ago, but not far from here. Archaeologists made another discovery that indicates an occupation dating from 25,000 years ago. The French archaeologist Eric Boeda has been excavating at the foot of these cliffs since 2008.
There are a lot here. Look at that. Magnificent.
He was called in to restart a 1980s excavation site from the beginning. At the time, the site caused a great deal of controversy. The prehistorian Nied Guidon was trying to date the rock paintings. To do that, she excavated at the foot of the cliffs. Very quickly, she discovered stones which, according to her, were tools made by humans. Against all expectations, she dated them from 32,000 years ago. Her study was published in Nature, a very important journal, and the debate exploded. Until then, no artifact dating from so far back had ever been found on the continent. Some archaeologists specializing in the Americas called her dating process into doubt. In addition, the stones appear archaic. Their size seems rudimentary, while tools from the same period found elsewhere on the planet were much more elaborate. Were these stones indeed sculpted by humans? The scientific community was skeptical. 20 years later, Nied Guidon asked Eric Boeda, who is a specialist in tools from prehistoric times, to restart this excavation site. What was your position in this debate?
Like a doctor.
Meaning?
When you first see a patient, you've made no diagnostic, so you must examine the patient, and after you form a diagnostic. So when I arrived here, I knew there was a debate, but I hadn't yet made up my mind which side to believe.
The first step of his investigation was opening up new excavation sites and dating the sediment layers. For his results to be incontestable, his team used 3 different techniques. Their conclusions are indisputable. The oldest layers date from 25,000 years ago. In these ancient layers, Eric and his team regularly find stones that are identical to those found by Nied Guidon.
This is a sampling of artifacts found on this site, which caused a lot of controversy. This stone, for example, was found just a few minutes ago. We see several fractures on this stone. One here, a second one, a third, and here you see where smaller fractures were made.
Yes, we see small fracture marks.
Exactly.
Eric also sees these fracture marks as man-made. But to prove it, he must respond to his detractors' arguments point by point. What is it about the stones that creates such a heated debate?
It's because when you look at them, they seem to be ordinary fractured stones. People see fractures made either by nature or by other phenomena.
The first argument to oppose his theory is that the stones were fashioned not by humans, but damaged by nature. Because they are found at the foot of the cliffs, made up of layers of quartz, and when they fell, they were simply fractured in the process. Eric takes us to another excavation site a few miles away, where he has proved quite the contrary. At this site, the cliffs are composed of limestone and not quartz.
Here we have limestone cliffs, and at the top of the cliffs you can see there is nothing. There are no supplementary geological deposits. Quartz stones never existed here, never. I've brought you stones found in our dig here.
Right here?
Right here. You're going to help me. Take this stone.
Astonishingly, it's a quartz stone.
Here is a tool showing microdenticulations.
The multiple markings you describe in this stone could not have been created by natural elements or some other haphazard cause?
No, gravity could not have made them. There's no higher ground. The stones could not have been fractured by a fall. And on top of that, several consecutive fractures, meaning they would have bounced, so it's not possible. Another possible answer is water torrents could have carried the stones and then they collided with each other. But here, water can't be the answer because we're at the summit. And the river terraces are at least 1.5 miles away, and they're 150 feet lower.
Much too far away.
So the stones had to be brought here. Nature could not have manufactured this object.
To support his theory, Eric launched a unique and ambitious study. He collected thousands of natural stones, and they're being compared to the stones found in the excavation sites. The results leave no doubt. "80% of the naturally fractured stones show only one single impact point, such as this one. And only 2% have 3 fractures. Yet, the stones found in the dig sites have up to 15 fractures, which in addition are contiguous. But on the naturally fractured stones, the fracture marks are spread out randomly. They're not next to each other. Nature is haphazard. Though they are rudimentary, the stones found by Eric could not have been manufactured by nature. But that still does not prove that they were manufactured by humans. It could have been monkeys. In any case, that's the second argument against Eric's theory. Thanks to experimental archaeology, he was able to show that sculpting the stones is a more elaborate process than it seems.
Here are the little stones. There's another. It's perfect, but there's a little fracture. We'll take it anyway.
It all begins with choosing the raw material, which according to Eric is a calculated process.
We're not collecting mushrooms. We must be careful to maintain the quality of the raw material. That's important. And the morphology of the raw material.
The morphology? Meaning there are a certain number of important characteristics for choosing the right stones to sculpt?
Exactly. The choice already includes certain elements of the tool. That's fundamental because it's not a completely homogeneous material. So the more you chip away at it, the more you create fractures and are less likely to reach your goal. So we compensate with an extremely precise selection in terms of the quality of the raw material in the presence of certain technical criteria for the future tool.
Eric is one of the rare French archaeologists who can sculpt rock.
Okay, we'll work here.
As for me, I'm unable to. It took Eric years of practice to learn.
We'll set up here. We chose this one with a smooth surface. It has a good morphology. So we'll strike this edge here while maintaining the smooth surface in order to create a sharp cutting edge. There, we proceed slowly with little strikes, and this allows me to test density and the hardness. And with each strike, we see the fracture. A little harder, and there you have it. I'll correct a little bit, and there, I obtain a sharp edge.
It's true these objects are quite elaborate. In reality, not at all archaic.
For me, these are not at all archaic tools, because as the technician, I'm looking for a beveled edge and the sharpness. The smooth surface here, I made sure to get that in my selection. The smooth surface gives me a homogeneous contact with the material and allows me to vary my gesture, which is fundamental. So my tool is very, very effective.
Yet in many places around the planet during that period, there were already more advanced production technologies that created double-faced axes.
That's right, but the people adapted to their raw material. With flint, for example, they were able to sculpt the stone. Here the morphology is limited, so they adapted their gestures and functions to the material.
But as others have claimed, could monkeys have manufactured tools like this?
No, because monkeys don't use sharp edges. In a raw material, you have its weight and the capacity to create a sharp edge. Monkeys use only the weight, that's all. The manufacture of a sharp edge is unique to humankind.
Thanks to experimentation, Eric explains the rather rustic aspect of these sculpted stones. It's linked to the very nature of quartz. To support his theory, he must now prove that these stones were indeed used for human activities, though a part of the scientific community still doubts this. Because nothing like this has been found elsewhere. Other prehistoric tools, such as arrowheads or spearheads, are in the collective memory, and we easily recognize them. This is not the case with these Brazilian stones that were manufactured 25,000 years ago. Eric Boeda contacted Ignacio Clemente Conte, a Usewear specialist. By studying the sharp edge, he can determine if they were used and how. Are there any traces which show that these stones found by Eric were used as tools?
Yes, we found traces from use on most of the shaped stones identified by Eric. There are traces from use on over 85% of them. Look here, this crystal was modified by use. Its edge became rounded off over time. Here you see abrasions and scratches that indicate an oblique movement of the sharp edge. It would appear that it was used for working wood.
Cut wood?
To split and to cut, for example. As you can see, the size of this instrument is large. You can hold it in your hand.
So they had different tools for different uses.
Apparently, yes. It's the case for these tools. Some were used for butchering animals. Others were used to work on wood.
To understand how people used these tools, to discover the movements they used, Ignacio will also carry out experiments.
Let's go.
He will use the tools sculpted by Eric Boeda on models of archaeological pieces.
Vamos por aquí.
Come on.
A ver qué útiles ha preparado.
Let's see the tools Eric prepared for us.
Voilà. Podemos utilizar.
We can work on several materials, for example, on wood.
Oh yes, it works well.
Esto era, por ejemplo,
This shaped stone, for example, shaves or planes wood. It strips off the bark. The branch can then become a tool handle, a spear, an arrow, etc. Other edges are good for cutting.
Yes, with that tool you can literally cut the branch. Or more like saw it.
It's also good for hitting, like with an axe.
He's able to identify the functions for the different tools by testing them on different materials.
You can use its fine cutting edge to cut meat. I'll use this one, for example, with its small protrusion. It cuts the meat with no problem.
And though we have the impression that it is cutting with no problem, traces are left on the tool. In fact, they help to identify that it was used for cutting meat.
Yes, but normally, if its use is just cutting meat, this won't leave many marks. But if it's used for working on the skin, the tendons and the bones, this helps us understand which object was used for butchering. You want to try?
I'll take a nice piece of meat while I'm at it. Yeah,
It cuts like a kitchen knife.
right. A first piece.
Here, another technique is to hold the meat in your teeth and eat as you progressively cut it.
Yes, but that takes a little more experience.
Is it working?
It's very convincing. Can we say that this one is a scraper, a polisher, for piercing or for breaking?
Well, that's where the problem is. That's the whole problem, because when we look at them, they do not correspond to any tool that we know of today. It's as if a Martian came to Earth and you showed him a car. He wouldn't recognize it. We're here in the same situation. We're unable to recognize these tools except by conducting Usewear tests. Then we can see how they use the different types of tools.
Thanks to these experiments, Eric Boeda's investigation is taking great leaps forward. In addition, paleontology has been able to prove that the Serra de Capivara was at the time a favorable environment for human habitation. In the past, this very arid region experienced significant climate change. A French paleontologist proved this. Claude Guérin has been working here for 40 years, studying the vestiges of fauna that one hardly expects to discover in such a dry environment, such as this impressive humerus from a giant sloth.
It's from a mastodon, the largest animal at the time in the region. Its size is estimated to be that of an elephant, and we think that it measured 20 feet long and weighed 6 tons. It most certainly needed to eat about 200 kilos of plants per day and drink over 200 liters of water. which today's dry, spiny forests could never have provided. So the landscape at the time was much different, much more humid, and the vegetation was much richer.
All of the bones identified by the paleontologist are fundamental for understanding what the climate was during that period. Such is the case with this Toxodon skull. This species, which is close to the hippopotamus, lived mainly in the water. So lots of humidity, tall trees, lots of grass, prairies with lots of herbaceous plants.
A forest savanna.
During that period, can we imagine there was a forest savanna?
Exactly.
So at the time, the environment would have been conducive to humans?
Of course. Everything was present. There were animals, there were plants, water, everything humans needed to survive.
Here is a hypothesis for a reconstitution of the landscape 25,000 years ago. The last opposition is disproven. For Erik and his team, there is no longer any doubt. The environment was not an obstacle for human habitation. Erik's investigation is now complete. His results were published in the professional journal Antiquity. And this time, there is no debate. The article convinced numerous specialists all around the world, including some who recently harbored doubts. Andre Strauss is an anthropologist at the University of Sao Paulo, and up until recently, he was a member of the community of skeptics. What did you think the first time you saw the famous stones?
The first time I saw them, they didn't look at all anthropic to me. It took a while until I could recognize some features in some of them that suggest they are made by man. I think the French mission was capable of assembling a huge amount of information coming from different backgrounds, great dating, microair analysis, the techno analysis, and it's quite clear for me that in response of a lot of papers that came out from the French mission in the last 3-4 years, there was not a single line that was written to say it is wrong.
The theme's not easy. All the debate about when humans first arrived in the Americas.
Yeah, this basically means that we know nothing about half of the history of settling of America. And I think the challenge now is how we are going to fill this gap, this gigantic gap, how to explain this almost 14,000, 15,000 years that we know almost nothing about the first Americans. And basically, we need to start from the scratch. You know, we're just starting this. And I think the important thing now is to have more people trying to help to fill this and contribute to try to find other sites of similar age all over the continent.
As an anthropologist, what do you hope to discover?
There's one thing still missing, that's the human bones. And it's important to consider if those guys were here for 15, 20,000 years occupying these landscapes. And we do know that bones preserve at Serra da Capivara, especially at the limestones. It's almost a logic necessity that the bones will be found eventually. And although they're not completely necessary to make the point, they would certainly be the final rock to bury this old debate.
Définitivement.
Finally.
You agree, right? Yeah. Perfect. We are going to find next year, right?
That's bad.
But where to look? The excavation zone is gigantic, thousands of square hectares. The bodies may have been buried together in places reserved for tombs, or maybe they were incinerated. We know nothing of their practices. But what Erik and his team have been able to prove is that Homo sapiens' long march to the Americas indeed occurred 25,000 years ago.